First and foremost, I'd like to send my condolences to Jason Arday's family and friends. Rest in peace, Jason Arday. This isn't good. It isn't. Now, this is going to be a long POV because there's a lot to unpack. There's a lot that needs to be said, so just buckle up. But before I get into the individuals, I want to say this. Did we not learn anything from Caroline Flack? Remember her? What about Jade Goody, Liam Payne, even Amy Winehouse? Not all of those people that I mentioned on that list died from the abuse they received of the internet. But I can tell you, it is a contributing factor. We've watched people become public entertainment. We've watched the media tear them apart, watched the public turn on them, and then watched everyone suddenly become sympathetic once the damage has been done. And yet, here we are again. Instagram and TikTok have taken public execution to a next level. Everyone has a platform, everyone has an opinion, everybody thinks they're the investigative journalist, everyone thinks that they're a detective and they've got the best advice, everyone thinks they're entitled to put someone on trial. And because these platforms reward outrage, controversy, the more inflammatory you are, the more attention you get. So I have a few social media creators and platforms that I'd like to discuss because, quite frankly, I don't think some of you understand what you are participating in. Enemy of progress. Number 1, the Shade Borough. If anyone should be cancelled, let's start here. This platform has an enormous following and plays a huge role in informing the masses about what's happening within our community. And that's exactly why I have a problem with it. Because when you have that kind of reach, you have a responsibility. The Shade Borough's content is often extremely controversial and, in my opinion, sometimes presented in a way that can be leading or misleading. Because everybody wants to be first. First to break the story, first to get the comments going, first to get views. But being first and being accurate are two completely different things. And then we have the comment section, cheese and bread. These comments become a competition to see who can come up with the darkest or funniest, disrespectful response. And when those comments aren't properly challenged or moderated, the audience gets to participate in the pylon. Followers expect drama. The Shade Borough knows they expect drama. And their defence is often, "Oh, we're just giving the people what they want." Are you really? Or have you created a platform that conditions people to want it? Because that's the part I think people miss. You can't continually feed people outrage and then pretend that you have nothing to do with their appetite for it. You influence the timeline. You influence what people talk about. You influence how people perceive the person you're discussing. And when you've got nearly 1 million people watching, that is a lot of influence. And I'm not saying that the Shade Borough is solely responsible for Jason Arday's death. I'm not saying that. But I absolutely believe that platforms need to consider the consequences of the environment they help create. Do you know what I'm saying? Using someone's pain, humiliation, or controversy as clickbait has consequences. Because hate gets what it wants. It gets the views. Views make money. And money funds a lifestyle. The cars, holidays, the parties, whatever the case may be. And at some point we need to start asking, Where does commentary end and exploitation begin? I unfollowed the Shade Borough, and you know something? Before today, I had never heard of James Arde. My introduction to him was through a social media post portraying him in a negative light. Because imagine being introduced to someone for the first time through a headline designed to make you dislike them. That's how powerful these platforms are, you know. And then I looked up my own Instagram following and I noticed that I had 42 mutual accounts, content creators and influencers that I follow who also follow the Shade Borough. Names including, in no particular order, ZZ Mills, Steve-O the Madman, Your Aunties Could Never, Eddie Nesta, Swiss from So Solid, I think it was from So Solid, I don't remember, and Judy Love. I have a genuine question for these people. Why the ras are you still following this platform? Is it because you need to stay informed? Or is there some unwritten rule that creators aren't supposed to criticize other creators? Because here's the thing. The Shade Borough has no obligation to protect you. If tomorrow you become the story and they plaster your face all over their page with the most inflammatory headline imaginable, suddenly you become the content. So why support something you wouldn't want done to you? That's my question. Enemy of progress number 2, Elaine, the flipping pain. Now, some of you may already know how I feel about this young lady. If you don't, she irritates the shit out of me. Elaine the Pain is a troll. Let me put this disclaimer out there. I'm no psychologist. I cannot diagnose Elaine with anything. However, when I look at the characteristics she's displaying, they are commonly associated with narcissistic personality disorder. I recognize certain behaviors that, to me, appeared similar to that diagnosis. That's an observation, not a clinical diagnosis, okay? I'm not claiming to know her medical history. What I can judge is what she puts on the internet. And some of her behavior comes across to me as impulsive, provocative, and extremely reactive. And that's dangerous when you have an audience, right? So one day, Lois came onto the internet with her account of an alleged sexual assault. Elaine initially appeared to respond with compassion, support, great. Concern for another black woman, fantastic. But that didn't last very long, because within 24 hours, her tone had completely changed. Suddenly, she, Elaine, was questioning Lois's credibility. She began investigating her, pulling apart her story and building a case, and effectively positioning herself as the judge, jury, and executioner. Lois went from being someone who had allegedly experienced trauma to becoming the villain of the story. And that's when I had a serious problem, because if you have questions, ask the questions. Fair. If you don't believe something, say you don't believe it. Again, fair. But when you have a huge following, hanging on to your every word, you need to understand that your audience may not see your commentary as simply your opinion. They may see it as the truth. And that's where the responsibility lies. So Elaine later came back with what I considered to be a very backhanded apology. while also turning the comments off. Nobody is forcing you to turn someone's trauma into content. You do that all by yourself. And then barely 12 hours later, she moved on to the next thing. New story, new controversy, new content. Yesterday's scandal had become today's chip paper. The person you've just dragged is left dealing with the aftermath, while you, the creator, moves on to the next trending topic. I also saw Elaine discussing her own mental health. I found it particularly interesting because this conversation came right after the death of Jason Arday. And she had the bloody cheek to compare aspects of her own online experiences with what Jason experienced. Jason was subjected to a campaign of abuse and misinformation. Elaine, from what I have seen, actively creates provocative content. She throws the metaphorical grenade into the crowd and then her audience gets involved. That's the distinction I'm making. You cannot continually provoke and then act shocked when the people respond. You can't throw rocks in the crowd, laugh your face off, then hide your hands and let your followers do the rest of your work. That's how you create an angry mob. Just like that. And that's what concerns me. Enemy of progress number 3, Bouncer. I watch his content sometimes. And where is his research? How the hell are you producing this much commentary this frequently and still finding the time to properly investigate what you're talking about? How, Sway? It feels like the video has come out before the thinking has even happened. Do you get it? And then we get repetitive word salad and speculation and opinion delivered like, sir, it's YouTube. You're allowed to say, I don't know. You're allowed to say, I need more information. You're allowed to wait. Now again, during the Lois situation, Bouncer was one of the people who publicly questioned her credibility. He was one of the first. And he and Elaine appeared to be pushing the same narrative. It was basically a collaboration. And honestly, I can't tell you how much that irritates me. It irks my soul. And then there's me. Now somebody's probably thinking, well, Jess, who the hell are you? And you know what? Fair question. Hi, I'm a content creator too, but I don't post as often as some people would like me to. Here's the reason. I don't believe I need to have an opinion about everything every single time. I don't want to be a part of this throwaway culture where everybody just feels compelled to comment immediately because they need the engagement or FOMO. My content often comes after I've watched, I've studied, I've observed. Sometimes I've sat with something for weeks, sometimes months, because I want to understand what I'm talking about before I open my mouth. That, my people, is called discernment. And that is what I think we have lost, or maybe some people never even had it. We've forgotten that behind the screen, the headline, there is a human being, a real person, probably with children and parents and partners and friends, a life outside of your phone. And we reduce them to a storyline because the algorithm has decided that they are today's main character. That is sick. And if you follow platforms like the Shade Borough and Elaine and Bouncer, I want you to really ask yourself, what are you consuming? Especially those of you who are 40 plus. You should know better. The internet is the devil's playground. And I'm not asking you to agree with me. I'm asking you to just think. Think before you share. Think before you comment. Think before you pile on. Or you make somebody else's trauma your entertainment. Because one day, that person at the center of the story could be you. And I'm not talking lottery. And when that happens, I hope somebody remembers that behind the headline, you're a human being too. So, is it time to cancel these influencers who claim that they're for the people, but whose content suggests otherwise? What say you?